Abend.
Guten Abend, Michael.
How are you?
I'm very well. It's been a beautiful day here in the UK. Been very sunny, very uncharacteristic for the time of year. But very, very, very
Britain, the new Caribbean island.
well, a little bit. I think the weather. I think it was in the sort of definitely the mid-20s, and you can always tell because everybody was out in their flashy cars driving around. Yeah, as soon as the good weather comes out, they're all going around. So yeah, it was one of those days here in the UK. Yeah.
Has anything of it inspired you for today's stream, or is this all settled for a long time?
Well, no, it's not so. I find inspiration from many places with the stream themes, but hey, I was in the sort of jazz mood this week. So
jazzy mood. Oh,
yeah,
I loved the take on the early British jazz. That was
Michael, you're right. It's kind of a bit of a continuation of that, but we're gonna be going back, and in fact, we're going to be focusing on America, and we're specifically going to be looking at Blue Note 10-inch records, and from the years 1952 to 1954, which was a very important time for the whole modern jazz movement. A lot of firsts. So I want to really go back and sort of really delve into that.
That's amazing, because to be really honest, I haven't seen much original 10-inch Blue Notes.
Well, firstly, they are hard to find in nice condition. That's given, because a lot of them, we're looking at records from the early 50s. We're looking at mono records, and we're looking at 10 inches, and 10 inches are an interesting one. Particularly with Blue Note, you got to think everybody, all the collectors, they go mad for the 1500, the 1500 series. That's the 12-inch Blue Notes, that famous series. They'll sell their homes to get them. That sort of record, But we're going to go back. We're going to go back to more of the origins of this modern jazz that appeared on Blue Note. Some of the best artists. And these are actually the first records. These were pre the 1500 series. And you've got to look at how Blue Note transitioned. And I want to try and talk a bit about that and cover it. And it'll be an interesting one. Let's put it that way.
The stage is yours.
I'm going to start, right? So we're going really early here. I'm starting in I said 1952 to 1954, but we're going to start in 1953, and we're going to start with Miles Davis. Miles Davis Volume 2. This is Blue Note 5022. So BLP 5022, and I can't. You got to look at these records of how important they are. This is the earliest. There were like 3 sessions that Miles Davis did with Blue Note, and they were collated on a series of 3 10 inches. And this is one of them. This is the Volume 2. There's one before, Young Man with the Horn, and then there's Volume 3. And they're part of the Blue Note modern, this modern jazz series. You got to think, this is 1953. We're going right back. We're getting right back to the origins of where this stuff comes from.
70 years old records.
Oh, well, you don't even want to, think how old this is.
70 years.
It's unbelievable how old it is. And, this was a very interesting time in Miles Davis's life. You got to remember when he was doing these Blue Note sessions, and he did them between 1952 and 1954. He did these 3 sessions. He was addicted to heroin. Right, he wasn't in a good way, but this was such a formative time for this music, and also some of the other artists on this record. It is so important with what was going on. You've got Jimmy Heath on there. You've got Art Blakey, and they actually say that during
this also is always such a surprise to me. I will never get used to it that also Art Blakey was there at this early point.
Yes, he was. I mean, Art Blakey was. If you looked at all the artists, you'd have to say that Art Blakey was probably one of the most important jazz musicians in terms of the amount of other musicians he played with, and the sessions that he was on as a drummer were some of the most important modern jazz sessions, ever. So it can't be done. And the other thing, Michael, is he was also high on heroin. Him, Jimmy Heath, and Art Blakey, Mozzo, they actually said they were so high when they recorded this, and that's crazy. Now, what's important with these? Now, people shy away from 10 inches a little bit. As you know, I come from a classical vinyl background, and some of my favorite records, particularly looking at the French stuff, some of the best French classical music was put out on 10-inch. So you look at labels like Ducretet Thompson, like the Le Discophile Francais, that 10-inch was the format of choice for many of these small and very important record labels, and the same goes for Blue Note.
Can you get into the specifics? Why at that time 10-inch? What is the optimal playing time of a 10-inch? What makes?
Obviously, it's just shorter than a 12, right? We're talking. We're losing 2 inches off the size. Yeah, it's interesting that. I mean, if you're talking about the reasons why they put 10s, I can't give you a firm answer on that. But what I would say is that a lot of 78 RPMs or a lot of 10-inch size 78s as well. Now, I play a lot of, I use a turntable, a French turntable called the Pierre Clément from the mid 1950s to play mono records on, and I mean they're beautiful. I mean they're sort of works of art in their own right, and the cartridge that's used on those, they make these old mono records absolutely sing. And it's interesting that the reason I reference that is the Pierre Clément turntable, the platter size is actually 11 inches. So a 12-inch actually hangs over the edge, but a 10-inch fits very nicely. So, and Pierre Clément was instructed by the RTF, the National Radio, French Radio and Television Company, to make the best quality mono turntables for broadcast use, with bar none. So they had to make the best, and he made them with a view to play 10-inch LPs, you see. So it's interesting because, like I say, a lot of people maybe turn their noses up a bit of a 10 inches, but I think there's a lot of wonderful music and firsts to be found on 10-inch. So you should maybe, people should look at them a bit more in that regard. So I just want to go back to this this record. So there were 3 sessions, and what Miles Davis did, people will be familiar with some of the music from this, because what they did was Blue Note, they transitioned to doing 12-inch.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're looking at the 1500 series, and you might know that the first 2 records. So the BLP, is it 1501 and 1502? Miles Davis Volume 1 and Volume 2. These are compilations. They're not original. They're compilations of these first 3 10-inches. You see. So really, we're looking. This is the original. Those Miles Davis records didn't come out till later. I think it was probably 1955, 1954 towards the end. Yeah. So we're looking at firsts here with these.
About how many 10 inches in the Blue Note catalog? Do you have any idea how many 10 inches we have in the Blue Note catalog? Any idea?
I would say, well, there's at least 100.
Okay.
Yeah, at least, because it'd be 5001 is the first. We're definitely looking at least 100. I don't know the exact amount, but I've got quite a few actually. I've collected them for many years, and I've got ones going right up. So it's probably, if someone in the gallery might want to get the exact number, but it's definitely at least that. And a lot of the early ones, are really, are very, very sought after. Now, I'm gonna, because we're looking at Blue Note now, I don't want to, I want to do this properly.
Yes.
I want to look specifically at the characteristics of early Blue Notes, the pressing characteristics, but also the label characteristics. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a sort of deep dive into that, so we can see.
Yeah, lovely, wonderful. Yes, please.
Good label to start with in this regard. So if I just get this into focus, there we go. So, we all know about sort of Blue Note characteristics on the label. So we'll start with the address. So you got the Blue Note record 767 Lexington Avenue, NYC, New York City. And this was the first address, the that was used on Blue Notes, on the vinyl that we know and love. You know, this was it was their home from about 1951 to 1957. So that's one of the first characteristics. And you know, everybody looks for the Blue Note Lexingtons, don't they? So all the original 10-inches have this address on them. You know, the first one. So it's an important thing to, you know, for collectors to spot. The next thing we're going to look at is the deep groove here. So this is again something that the collectors all well, they all go totally mad for, don't they? A deep groove Blue Note is something that is revered the world round. And talking a bit, I just want to talk a bit about deep grooves because you know what that's basically, it's to do with the when you press records, yeah, a die is used to hold the metalwork to do this, you know, the metal stamper that you press the record from. And this is actually, the deep groove is a characteristic of the die that is used to hold these metal plates, right? The metal stamper.
Right, and nowadays it's such a pain to recreate them, right? When they do the reissues.
I'm going to be a bit controversial here because, you know, people go mad for a deep groove, yeah. What a deep groove does is it does give an indication of time of when a record was pressed, yeah, because, you know, with these, I think it was till about 1961. About mid 1961, they stopped doing the deep groove and they moved to the other label profile, which has a ridge, yeah. But you know, in terms of sound quality, the deep groove doesn't make a difference itself. Yeah, that's just a characteristic.
I've never tried. I've never played the deep groove. Did you?
But you know, and I'll tell you something that some very serious, important people that work in vinyl pressing will tell you the same. They'll go, "Oh, that's just the die. You know, it doesn't make a difference to the sound."
Yeah,
right?
but somehow, you know, it's
But
nostalgic.
the thing is, what it does give you is that time frame. It means that it was the die used between a period of years, you know, which will mean that record was made during that time. Yeah. So yeah. So Justin's right, till 1961. You see, so we've got that there. So all Blue Notes, which means all the 10-inches, quite a lot of the 1500 series as well. I think up to, what is it? A BLP 5043. I don't know. Again, Justin, you probably know that. In fact, let's have a look through to 4. Oh yeah, and even some of the early 4000 series. But yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, the deep groove is there for everyone to see, right?
But again, let me state one thing which is learned by us now. If you watch the spindle hole, the vinyl, it looks quite impressive for a 70-year-old record.
Oh yeah, I mean that's true actually. Yeah, now this is you know.
And what we always stated for the Blue Note originals, they are pressed like tanks, and
they are.
Does this go for the 10 inches too?
Oh, very much so, very much so. So they're all pressed by Plastilite, yeah. You know, all these early ones, and I'm going to talk a bit about, you know, again, these are the characteristics that everyone looks for. So I just want to make sure I cover them all off. But you're right. So these Plastilite pressings were incredibly well pressed. You know, the lacquers were incredibly well cut, and when you get that combination, you get a record that can really stand the test of time. And that's why you can get Blue Notes that might visually look poor, or well, not poor, but do you know what I mean? There's a lot of marks on them. But when
not poor in the sense of the grading, but in the
but you know what I mean, that you look at it and you think, oh, it's got a load of marks. But if you play that on a proper dedicated mono system, it will still sing. You know, a lot of the marks do not impact the grooves as much as maybe on other records. So that's definitely a characteristic of early Blue Notes for sure. So anyway, yeah. So moving on to the other things we look for. So we've got the we're all familiar with the ear. See there where I've got the light. It's the ear, but is it?
Yeah, we can see it quite good. We can see it quite good.
Everybody, you know, they term it ear or P. So it's actually a cursive P which is the pressing, is the signature for Plastilite, the pressing plant. Yeah. So this is a Plastilite pressed Blue Note 10-inch. Now, another characteristic of a lot of early Blue Notes, there's another engraving on here. So again, I'll see if I can get it. There's like a 9M. Yeah, so you'll see it's probably around here somewhere. I can't really get that one very well.
9M.
Yeah, see, there's an engraving 9. Yeah. Now, Plastilite in the early days, they were actually pressing a lot of different, not just Blue Note, they were pressing other labels as well. And what they did was that was like a signature to indicate who the record label was or client, because they actually also pressed for Prestige. Yeah, they pressed for Dial, they pressed for Debut.
So we also have our 10 inches from Prestige, Debut, Savoy.
Yeah, so they had different ones. So 9M was Blue Note, yeah. And then there's what was Prestige? I'm trying to do this off my head. I love to test myself in these things. 7E. I think it's 7E for Prestige.
Okay.
There's Dial, Charlie Parker. That was a 3. Is it 3R? 3R, I think. Anyway, so yeah, so it's really interesting that was considered a reference of the label, so Plastilite, and whether it was used for, they were probably just doing it as a accountancy thing, or just controlling, knowing who it was linked to, because they're obviously pressing an awful lot of records.
Yeah. Those records have been quite heavy sellers, right, in its time.
Well, I would imagine, I couldn't tell you, for something like this, I couldn't tell you what the pressing numbers were. I know a bit more about the British stuff with regards to pressing numbers, but with this, I would imagine at that time, because if you think that period, that early 50s period, was an incredibly rich time for modern jazz. They would, and if they were handling all these labels, Prestige as well, they would have been pressing an awful lot of records at the same time. So you got to keep track of it somehow, hey? And that's how I did. So yeah. I'm going to show you as well, while I'm talking about these early Miles Davis sessions. I've got the volume 3 as well, which I think has got a very beautiful cover.
Yes, that's, by the way, a quite famous cover.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
Totally. Who was the engineer of it? Was it already a Van Gelder?
With these ones, yeah, no, these were recorded at Van Gelder Studios. Yeah, they don't have the RVG stamp in the Dead Wax, but they were recorded at Van Gelder Studios in Hackensack. So yeah, in New Jersey.
So the records you have shown so far, those 2 Miles Davis, those are original US first pressings?
Yeah, these are original US first pressings. This one was 1953. This one is 1954, and they were all recorded. That they were all recorded from these 3 sessions that Miles Davis did for Blue Note. Yeah, wonderful. In that, when I always do these, I'm always thinking about the time frames on things. And again, like we talked about the 90s before, there's this really rich period of this 52 to 54 for the jazz, which is just superb. And I love that. You start to sort of delve into it, and you go, "Oh, look what first happened during this time." You see, so yeah. So
you didn't miss anything, Joe. Just 1952 and 1953 and 1954 Miles Davis original.
So I'm going to I want to sort of move on. There's some other great Miles Davis records from around that time. I was even thinking, because I've got a lot of the early Prestige, but when I started to go into this yesterday, I was thinking I'm going to do Prestige as a separate one. So I just want to keep this specific Blue Note, and then what I'll do is I'm going to look at the 10 inches that Prestige put out. Cool. Yeah, and we'll do that as a separate one.
That's cool.
So. But what I do want to look at is another very, very important pianist from this era, yeah? And we're looking at, here we go, yeah? Horace Silver, yeah? The Horace Silver Trio, yeah? And, again, sort of looking at artists of this particular era. This one again is super important. This is actually 1954, which is about as late as we're going to get today. In terms of years. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not going past 1954.
Oh, Dave, this is the first because we never ever covered only 2 years.
You're right. It's bad, isn't it? I love it.
But for a good reason.
But again, so look, if we look at the artist lineup on here, yeah, we've got Art Blakey.
Again,
Yeah. And we've got Sabu as well, who's a great, he plays conga drum. And again, we Art Blakey, see, he's appearing on all of these early sessions. Yeah,
he's unbelievable. This guy is unbelievable.
He's, an absolute legend. Yeah, absolute legend. And yeah, so we can look at the back. Oh, by the way, I wanted to point out something important on this one. If you see, it says new faces, new sounds. And what I find interesting, so Blue Note had this series they called New Faces, New Sounds. Okay. And again, that was very much during this 52 to 54 period where they were actually introducing a lot of these.
Yeah, right. I know when you say Blakey, when you say Davis, now we say, oh, those are giants. Those are heroes for several decades. But at that point, they were new faces.
New faces, new sound. Yeah. That's why this is such an important period, because this is where it is really coming out for the first time, on recorded format with beautiful covers. Yeah. I mean, look at the stunning artwork on that. It's this really, really special. And Horace Silver was so important. I mean, he ended up becoming a mainstay for Blue Note for nearly some 30 years, as a leader. So this is volume 1. I mean, actually, no, sorry, volume 2. There is one before this. I think it's 5018, if I remember off the top of my head. Again, I'm doing this a bit on the fly. So, but this is the volume 2. And again, these are from the very earliest sessions, that were recorded on Blue Note by some of these modern jazz artists. So important. Another thing about Horace Silver, he worked with some of the other really important. So I'm gonna show you a Lou Donaldson record, and again, it's Lou Donaldson's first record he ever put out, and Horace Silver learned a lot of about the bebop style from Lou Donaldson. So these musicians were obviously working all together on these sessions, and they were helping to develop each other. And Art Blakey being the stalwart on the drums behind it all, you see.
And what we never should forget, those guys with all their with all this genius they have inside them, those have been real workhorses. Concerts every day. Concerts every day. Record, session. It's unbelievable. I think nowadays we work-life balance.
Well, like I've said before, they call jazz the reluctant art, and it's because even back then. I mean, there's a story I read about it that Miles Davis. So those records we were looking at, Thomas, that's great. Yeah, that's a great. Sabu's amazing. During this period, like Miles Davis, those records that we looked at, the reason he was doing it, he was hard up for money at the time. He needed to record sessions to make a bit of money to get to get some money out the labels. Yeah, so that's why he had that prolific period with Blue Note and Prestige as well. There's an awful lot of early records on Prestige because this is pre-fame, pre Birth of the Cool, pre-Bitches Brew. This is early.
Decades before Bitches Brew. But Dave, have they been in a similar situation at that point of time, like a Stan Tracy? What you told us about him, or better?
That's linked to the British jazz because very similar. These times were very different for them. This is at the start. They weren't famous then. There obviously there was the scene that was going on, and obviously there was a really there was a really strong scene around this modern jazz that was appearing, and people were going to the clubs. But it's at the start of the recorded works of it. And that's what really interests me about these 10 inches. The firsts of things appearing. And that's why I love it. You know, again, I'll refer to that new faces, new sounds, because the next one I'm going to show again, you know, is again from that same series on Blue Note. Yeah. So have a look at this. In fact, so before I go to that, I've got one more. This is a bit of a later one, and again, it's another Horace Silver, but it's one that I want. Again, it's a bit later. It's only we're only moving to 1954. Yeah. So this is another 1954 release. Yeah. Towards the end, but look at some of the artists that we're seeing appearing. This is Blue Note BLP 5058, and look, we've got Kenny Dorham on there. We've got Hank Mobley, and we got Doug Watkins. But
and
look,
of course, Art Blakey.
see,
Amazing.
He was there when all these artists were coming out for, you know, and being recorded and getting these 10 inches out. In fact, maybe one note while I'm showing this one, because it shows up quite well on here.
Yeah.
You know, this is you can see here. This was at the time when Blue Note's jackets, they had the proper frame construction.
Yes.
You can see the region, the classic. I call a lot of American records frame construction, but with Blue Notes, there's a particular type where the frame, you can only see the frame on two edges. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a classic frame construction jacket of which all the early, if you've got an original early one, will have that type of construction.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, I love the cover on that one. It's just so cool, you know. And this sort of
I mean, the cover art has a strong,
very strong
tradition on Blue Note through all decades. Let's say until the 80s. In the 80s, they lost it a bit.
Well, in fact, I'm going to part of what I want to talk about tonight as well is about how sort of looking at these early Blue Notes, but then looking at the Thomas is great that he spotted the Lou Donaldson gravy train there. You know, I like to do a little hidden record for someone to work out. So Thomas has got it.
They have great eyes over at Denmark.
They certainly do. They certainly do. In fact, I'm going to show another one of this new. We're going to go back to the new faces, new sounds, and we're going to look at Lou Donaldson's first record.
The very first record of Lou Donaldson. Okay.
Yeah. So you got Blue Note 5021. Yeah. Modern Jazz Series, new faces, new sounds. Lou Donaldson. We'll look at the lineup there. So look, we've got Horace Silver. Again, we've just been talking about Horace Silver, and I told you that they worked very closely together. And Lou Donaldson was really important in the development of Horace Silver as a modern jazz pianist. But we've also got Blue Mitchell, Gene Ramey, Percy Heath, and then our old favorite Art Blakey is again. He literally played on almost all of these early.
Or you are a huge Art Blakey fan and bought only the Art Blakey originals.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's no understatement to say that the records like this, I mean, they're very, very rare, very, very rare. And the cover,
you just can't, you cannot see it. Hey Joe is asking, the early covers aren't Reed Miles, are they?
I think some of them are. I think some of them are. I'd need to check. I mean, I know that some are already, a lot of the, the photography was being taken. So maybe Thomas can answer that, or someone else, in the gallery. But I'm pretty sure that he was already actively involved. Yeah, in fact, Novice Nick. So you're right. Lou Donaldson is still alive. Yeah, he's actually 96 years old, which is pretty impressive. So we're actually
who's still out there. We have then Lou Donaldson. We have the bass player Ron Carter.
Yeah.
Is Sonny Rollins? No, he died recently. Or is he still there?
I think Sonny Rollins is still alive. Again, someone maybe in the gallery can answer that. But yeah, there's very few. Lou Donaldson is one that is still alive. He's retired, but
come on, Dave. He's 96. Let him, please.
Well, maybe if he was in Germany, he would still be playing. I don't know. It depends what's expected of you, isn't it? So, anyway, yeah, he deserves a rest. But what I want to say about
this says Rollins is still alive. Okay.
All right. Oh, cool. Nice. this is going back a bit as well. So this is going to this is 1953. This one, but what's interesting with this is the sessions were recorded a lot earlier. Yeah, so they're like 19. The sessions on here are like 1952. Yeah, I think one was in it's like June and November 1952. So these are very early recordings. Yeah, and very important recordings because again, that's why I wanted to talk a bit about Lou Donaldson a bit more because he appeared on some very important albums. So again, we're talking about Art Blakey. He was part of the Art Blakey quintet that did the famous Night at Birdland. So there's three 10 inches of Night at Birdland with art, very famous. Two LPs, again compilations. It's important to point out that the first were on 10-inch. They moved to 12-inch later, right? So he was involved in that. So very important at the birth of this whole thing that was going on.
So what went into this? Maybe probably you also have to speculate. Let's do it a little bit. What led them do some of those as 12 inches a little later? Sales or
I think what it was probably a bit, obviously the 12-inch form of the record was becoming popular.
Yeah.
And I think they saw it as an opportunity to maybe, as Blue Note being good marketing, good business, thought it was an opportunity to take sessions. Because another important thing actually to point out with the 12 inches, some of the tracks on some of these 10 inches never made it to the 12-inch compilation. Some of them had to get left off because they were taking tracks and then reading. So again, it was probably in a similar way to if you're repressing something, it's just taking something and reformatting it for new, for people to consume again or people to find it for the first time on 12-inch because they
do you have any information if some people said, oh my god, why do they put it out as a 12-inch? We already have it as a 10-inch.
They discontinued the 10 inches as soon as they started doing the 1500 series as well. So they stopped that format and moved straight to the 12-inch. And they had, you got to think, they had all these recorded sessions. So it made a lot of sense just to redo it. Yeah, just to redo it. And there we go. Look, provided the photo. That's really good, Jeremy. Yeah. So there you go. Excellent. Really interesting.
Thank you.
You're going to love it at the end because I've done a little thing. Yeah, which people are going to like, but we'll get there. So
one important. Oh, Dave, we missed something important. Beer.
Beer. Let's stop. Let's take a breather because this is quite intense, isn't it? This is like intense jazz, Blue Note. Exactly. So we'll go to the beer, and I'm going to have a sip. We're on to here we go. So we've got a Daya beer going on in obviously a correctly presented glass with the Daya, and the beer is called Sound Machine Groove.
Okay, another comic book.
With the graphics, there we go. Hold on, let me get that. It's quite cool graphics, it has to be said.
It is for sure. Look at this.
For a double IPA, 8% from Daya, who are based in Cheltenham, and they're one of, again, as you know, I don't muck around when it comes to beers. They're one of the best breweries in the country, along with Verdant in Falmouth. So, yeah, I don't muck around when I have my beer for a stream, basically.
Dave, if you make it to Den Bosch this year, please bring some beer.
So I bring a little case with me, yeah, and we'll have some proper beers, yeah.
Nice IPAs.
I'll bring some IPAs. I'll bring some double IPAs as well. Some of those are not for the faint-hearted, though, but I know you'll be able to take it. I mean, you're going to have some practice next week, aren't you?
Probably.
Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about Lou Donaldson because I found it interesting that I like to talk about how transitions into scenes or finding out on musical journeys, and you got to look at Lou Donaldson. That later in the late '60s, he put an album out called Alligator Boogaloo, and this was more of like when the sort of funkier style of jazz came in, the soul jazz. That whole scene was a different scene, but that got reconnected again much later. So if we look to the 80s, the whole acid jazz scene happened. Giles Peterson, and they were playing a lot of this funkier soul jazz style. So you look at albums like Blue Note's Blue Break Beats, and you know this is interesting for me because I kind of got into jazz a bit through this scene happening. You see, and again, it's amalgamation of things happening. So that became really popular. This whole acid jazz, funky jazz, soul jazz style. It was very popular in the clubs in London, and you know we were looking at Blue Notes, going, oh look, Lou Donaldson, you know, Blue Break Beats, these albums. But it wasn't this early hard bop, bebop style, different style. But he was, again, one of these artists that sort of transitioned from that style through to this soul jazz, being one of the, you know, one of the pioneers of it. And that became popular a lot later on, like last week when we were talking about the whole two-tone scene and about how that revived ska. You know, that there was a revival of that style of jazz, which made people then look back at these musicians and go back to, you know, and finding these older Blue Notes. And, you know, I wish in hindsight, as we all would, back then, buying Blue Notes, they were a lot cheaper.
A lot. Quite a lot, right?
A lot. I mean, you know.
A lot. A lot.
A lot. I mean, like a devastating amount less compared to where it's gone now. So, you know, so important. Blue Walk, vitally important album. You know, and that was a 58 album. So, you know, we're only talking like 5 years or so, or 6 years after this. So, you know, again, you got to look at the transition from the 50s into the 60s, and then a lot later, and people finding this music again in the late 80s, and particularly into the early 90s. And again, we've got that early 90s period. I remember going to see, I saw Pharaoh Saunders. I was very lucky because you know, me and my friends, we were listening to album, you know, listen to Bitches Brew, and I was like, oh, this is amazing, you know, starting to find this music, and then going to see Ferris, and it's just because my friend got some tickets and went to see an amazing jazz art. And at the time, maybe I didn't appreciate what that was, but you look back at it and go, oh, you know, that's quite important, and it was all because of what was going on, you know. And then now, unfortunately, Blue Note records are pretty much untouchable for the normal man, aren't they? So hey, what can we do? So, what am I going on to next? Well, this is a nice one. This is one of my favourites, actually. Kenny Drew Trio.
I don't know this one.
Blue Note 5023. We're looking at early as well. Look, this is we're talking 1953.
Kenny Drew was also around then. Wow.
Yeah, and now should we look at the artists?
Oh, have you seen Art Blakey is on it? What a surprise.
You know, it's when you start doing little deep dives like this and looking at it, you start to see what's important, don't you? You know, and you start to see who the people were, the players that were making stuff happen. And but Kenny Drew, this is again, look, it's the Modern Jazz series, New Faces, New Sounds. First Kenny Drew, right?
Very first. Oh wow, okay, cool.
First Kenny Drew, Blue Note 10-inch, and you know, again, a very important album. You know, a really underrated pianist, And Kenny Drew's got an interesting story because he was one of the first, you know, obviously a few American musicians that moved to Europe, So he moved to Paris, Firstly, I think it was 1961, and then Michael, have a guess where he moved in 1964.
Düsseldorf.
Well, it would put you on the map. It would probably put you on the map a bit more. But I'll tell you where he went: Copenhagen.
A lot of them,
And he lived in Copenhagen.
A lot of those artists also did go. I think it was Paris, it was Copenhagen, and it was London, right?
London, but all they went to Sweden. But you know, it's interesting that Kenny Drew, you know, and recorded for Blue Note, ended up, you know, in the early 60s moving to Denmark, and living there. And you know, the thing is, maybe it sort of I call him one of the most underrated pianists of the whole jazz scene, right?
I think Justin Peter asked this is that Kenny's autograph behind you?
Yeah, I wanted to show this. I've got a Riverside original because I'm a really big fan of Kenny Drew, and it's I'll show you here. So this is quite a rare one on Riverside. It's a Kenny Drew trio with Paul Chambers and Philly Joe Jones, and it's autographed by Kenny Drew just here.
Wow. What a gigantic record. Oh, it's a 12-inch.
Oh, yeah. We're only doing 10 inches tonight, yeah?
You ruined it today, Dave.
Right, we got to stop the stream now. Anyway,
Will we see the autographed copy of Kenny Drew in the shop?
I love the art. There's something about the picture on that as well that I love. You know, it's just like, look at that. Some of this jazz artwork is just so amazing. That very simple.
It's almost an ECM-ish cover design. You know what I mean? It's almost like an ECM release with the photo.
I will just show the label on that quickly because, well, I had it up there, but it's the early type as well. So this is the first Riverside label. So as you can see, that this is the white. Before we get the blue silver type, we had the, you know, it's the Tape and Reels logo at the top, but the white and the light blue label there. Well, I've got to say something. I was, you know, I like that. Ruined by Autograph.
Autograph.
I've got to say, so Kenny Drew, he died on August the 4th, 1993.
Daniel, Dave ignored my question. This is not a good sign. I agree, Daniel. Dave, let's get briefly into this. What Joe wrote. Was that really the reason? Racism was terrible in the US. Can't blame them for leaving. Was that the real reason?
Wow. So yeah, I mean, we're opening up some big subjects here, aren't we? Really big subjects. It's crazy. But you know, you've got to look at Blue Note and stuff. You know, think what they managed to document at that time when racism was a huge problem. Yeah.
You have a record on your microphone, Dave.
Huh?
You have a record on your microphone.
No, I don't think I do. I think we're okay.
Okay.
You hear me? Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, but I was going to say, you know, Blue Note for documenting this period. And you've got to remember, these were European immigrants going over there and doing this to start with. But managing to document this in such a beautiful way, and now we can look back on it, and during very tough times, is so important as well. Yeah. So, hey, we can only just bow to them for what they did.
100%. Yeah.
There we go. So, I've got one more. We're going to get back to the proper size now. Yeah, we're not doing 12. We're going to 10. Yeah. And the last 10 of the evening. Yeah. And again, this one's a bit different. This is a bit off piece, this one, but it's again one that I really like. Yeah. And it's the Julius Watkins Sextet. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Julius Watkins was pretty much the father of jazz French horn. Yeah. He was the guy that played jazz French horn. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was the world expert on it, basically. And again, played with a huge lineup of important musicians. Yeah. Again, very early. I mean, this record, again, it's part of the New Faces, New Sounds series, as you can see there. And we'll look at the lineup. Shall we see who's on there? Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
No Art Blakey.
No Art Blakey.
You've got Kenny Clark on drums instead. Amazing.
Which is not bad either, right?
Oh, of course. But this is a bit more of an off-piece one because French horn is, you know, it's not the first instrument you think of when you think of modern jazz. But he was super important, yeah, in the whole development of that as a style. You know, he played with Thelonious Monk, yeah. A lot of these people, you've got to look at the other artists they play. Thelonious Monk, I'll just raise him as well because he was so important again across the whole spectrum of modern jazz and his styles, and everybody, you know, looked at him as being one of the most innovative, one of the innovators of modern jazz. So again, he learned his trade with the best, and so yeah, again, a very, very rare Blue Note. Yeah, very, very rare Blue Note.
Can imagine. Wow.
I love showing these.
Yeah, of course, those are gems, and you don't see them every 25 minutes.
No, I'll show the label on that one quickly as well because I've been hitting all the covers, but it's always nice just to remind ourselves of what the labels are. So again, you've got the 767 Lexington Avenue, NYC.
What is this zero beneath the BLP?
you know? I don't know, but I've seen. I'll tell you what. I don't know what it is on this particular record, but these purple ink stamps do appear. You sometimes see them. There's like a you sometimes see them on the sleeves. Yeah. So I've seen them where there's the word jazz stamped purple ink on the back, and you sometimes get there's two. Is it like I've got to remember what it was. There's like two letters together that it's done in a larger purple ink stamp. It might be something to do. I don't know. I actually don't know. It could be a tax thing.
Cannot know it all. Maybe can you answer Justin's question? Is there any relation to bassist Doug Watkins? Do you know this?
Oh, it could well be. I think they were, a lot of these guys. They came. A lot of the great musicians came out of Detroit.
Yeah.
We got to think of like Joe Jones. Yeah. And we had the Jones family, and then Julius Watkins was also Detroit. Yeah, he was one of these Detroit musicians. So Justin, again, you could be right. I don't know off the top of my head, but there were families like that because I just immediately I think of Philly Joe Jones. Yeah, I think of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. But maybe we can look at that afterwards. Yeah. There's only
always impressive. For someone who's only into classical music, you know quite something about jazz.
Well, I do. I would say I'm an expert at classical.
Oh, that's
intermediate. Oh yeah, well that's great. I mean, the Kenny Dorham Afro-Cuban is a beautiful.
It's record. A 10-inch originally.
Yeah, I wasn't. That is a 10-inch. There is also a 12-inch, and I'm just going to try and do it. I think it's BLP 5037. Is Afro-Cuban the 10-inch one with the red cover, but there is a 12-inch, a 10-inch with a white cover with brown, and it's very rare. It's very expensive, but yeah, it's a great record. So
yeah,
but I'll tell you what, I want to finish on something which I think people are going to love. I in one of these 10 inches, I got a little insert that came with it called the Blue Note Story. Yeah.
Aye.
And this is original by Leonard Feather, who writes a lot of the early liner notes for the sleeves. And this is look at this. This must be about 1953.
This is unbelievable.
Look
and they already had a little story to tell. See?
For complete free catalog, write to Blue Note Record. Look, it's got the 767 Lexington Avenue, New York 21 address on there. Yeah. And this came in one of the, look at it's beautiful condition. And rather than me sit here and read it out, I've actually uploaded a scan of this to the Jazz channel on the Discord. So if you want to read,
wonderful. Oh, that's cool.
It's already up there waiting to go. So there's something for all you guys to read and read about.
That's amazing.
And read the story. Yeah?
That's cool. Wow. Wow.
Cheers.
Cheers, Dave. That was again pretty impressive. So, will we ever see, or have we seen reissues of those 10 inches? They're quite shy in releasing those, right?
I'll tell you what it is, because when you think now about reissues, there will always be the lean to doing the 12-inch LP format. You know, the idea of releasing a 10-inch for a lot of labels.
Not all. There is one who did quite some 10 inches.
So never say never, right? Because to be honest with you, like I said at the start of this stream, I see the 10-inch format as a format along with 12-inch. I like it. I have no issues with it. That's why I've got a lot, and that's why I've got a lot of 10 inches. And if you want certain French records, you've got to have 10-inch. It's the only way you can consume them because they've never been reissued again. So, I think it needs a break. Give the 10-inch.
In Japan, there seems to be some reissues of.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think there were some in the 80s as well. Maybe even now. I know there are some. I know there's some on the classical side. There are some 10-inch reissues going on in Switzerland for some of the rare French 10 inches as well. But my whole message is give the 10-inch a break. Yeah. and that's the theme. So we've hit some mad blue notes tonight.
Yeah, amazing. I'm shaking.
And think about that. And again, I think about that. That's the start. You know, that a lot of those are firsts, and that's an important thing to think about. This, yeah, the 12 inches are actually compilations.
And another important question I have to ask it: will we see some of them in the shop, or is this strictly dated?
No, I would never. No, I'm going to. I might let one or two appear in the shop. This is not. I've got into my thing now of showing loads of nice things, and I really like to talk about things and impart the knowledge, and for us to all share. And we learn off each other as well. I love all the information that comes up. So it's part.
It's a beautiful forth and back and both back and forth with the gallery. It's beautiful.
We'll definitely make sure a couple appear in the shop this week. So leave that with me. All right.
Of course, I do.
Do it without that happening at the end. You see, so
cool.
Yeah, there we go.
Dave, nice one again.
And remember, we're going to do part 2 about Prestige.
We do that.
Here, and I'm going. Miles Davis did so much stuff on Prestige, and I know he fell out with them, and he did like sort of 4 records. Like he recorded so many sessions. They did 4 records just so he could kill his contract with them. So, but we've got to cover that as well. We must cover that. So
yeah,
I want to do that separately. I wanted this to be a pure blue note.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense.
So there we are.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you everyone for coming along.
See you next Sunday.
I hope it was educational and emotional.
For sure. See you next Sunday.